Let me start with a statement that might be uncomfortable if you're a leader. Most organizations believe that they have a people problem. They actually have a leadership development problem. Now, that sounds controversial because leaders often say things like employees are disengaged, we just can't find good talent. But after spending years inside executive leadership rooms, facilitating strategy sessions and leadership development conversations, I've noticed something. Employees don't behave randomly inside organizations. They respond to the leadership environment that exists. So when I see turnover, disengagement, repeated mistakes, or accountability breakdowns, I don't immediately see a workforce problem. I see leadership signals. And today we're going to talk honestly about what those signals mean. Welcome to Authentic Encounters, Lena Speaks, where leadership is not about position, but about impact. I'm Lena Morris, founder of Authentic Encounters, and each week I work with executive teams, CEOs, and organizations helping leaders move from training to transformation. Today's episode is a solo conversation. It's one I've wanted to have for a long time because inside executive leadership rooms, I often hear the same frustration. Organizations believe they have the people problem, but what I see most often is a leadership development opportunity. So today, we're going to unpack the difference. I remember facilitating an executive leadership session not too long ago where the organization had been struggling with turnover and declining engagement. And the leadership team opened up the session by explaining the problem. But as we started exploring what was really happening inside the organization, something interesting began to surface. Several leaders mentioned communication gaps, others mentioned unclear priorities, and one leader said something that shifted the entire conversation. They said, I think our team actually knows what the problems are. We just haven't addressed them yet. You don't say. The room got quiet because sometimes leadership teams already know where their gaps are, but addressing those gaps requires something difficult. It requires leaders to change their own behavior, and that's where many organizations take a pause. Sometimes leaders make one change, they hold a difficult conversation, they adjust one meeting structure, and then something really subtle happens. They begin to posture and change how they show up. And the tone becomes, well, we addressed that, but the deeper leadership work hasn't happened yet. And I've seen another pattern inside of executive teams. Leaders will acknowledge leadership gaps, but only partially. They make a small adjustment and then they defend that adjustment as if the problem is solved. Transformation requires more than small adjustments. It requires leaders to continually examine their own impact because the truth is organizations rarely stall when leadership environments stop evolving. Employees don't behave randomly. They respond to leadership systems around them. When I see things like turnover, disengagement, repeated mistakes, accountability breakdowns, I don't immediately see employee issues. I see leadership signals. And today I want to explore 4 of those signals. Signal 1, turnover. When leaders say we just can't keep people, the instinct is to blame the workforce, but turnover patterns often reveal leadership patterns. Gallup research shows managers account for a huge percentage of the variance in engagement and retention. And inside organizations, I often see this dynamic. Leaders believe people are leaving because of money. People often leave because of inconsistent leadership expectations, lack of development, unclear directions, and leaders avoiding difficult conversations. Another pattern I've observed, leaders will make one small change and believe the issue is resolved. But turnover usually reflects systematic leadership dynamics, not one isolated issue. Turnover often tells leaders something they don't really fully want to hear. Signal 2, disengagement. I often hear our employees are disengaged. But disengagement rarely appears overnight. Disengagement is a learned behavior. Employees disengage when they believe their voice doesn't matter. Feedback changes nothing. Leadership decisions are predetermined. And here's something I often see. Leaders say they want employees to speak up, but when people do speak up, they quietly dismiss those voices. But leaders rarely ask those isolated voices, are these early signs of culture trends? Healthy organizations investigate dissent. They don't silence it. Signal number 3, repeated mistakes. Another leadership frustration is, why do we keep making the same mistakes? Often the instinct is to blame employee capability, but repeated mistakes often reveal leadership system issues. Things like unclear expectations, inconsistent follow-up, leaders solving problems themselves. High-performing leaders often create this dynamic unintentionally. Because they are competent, they fix things quickly. But when leaders solve problems instead of developing people, they train the organizations to depend on them. If the same problem keeps returning, the organization has not solved it. It has temporarily managed it. And now, signal 4, accountability. Leaders say things like this: people just aren't accountable anymore. But accountability is not an employee personality trait. Accountability is a leadership structure. And here's a pattern I've seen repeatedly. Leaders delay difficult conversations, then they justify the delay, sometimes saying things like, we have a harmonious leadership team. Harmony can feel good, but harmony is not always a signal of effectiveness. Sometimes harmony simply means conflict is being avoided. Harmony without accountability produces comfortable teams, not high-performing teams. And here's the truth. Organizations say they want strong culture, but culture is not created by intention. Culture is created by behavioral patterns, not mission statements, not posters. Culture is shaped by what leaders consistently tolerate, correct, reward, or ignore. Employees learn culture by watching leadership behavior. Here's something else that I notice when I do leadership training. So we'll start the training and everybody is off to a great start and everybody wants to participate and feel good, rah, rah. But when the deeper behavioral work begins, progress slows and occasionally people's attention shifts. So then they want to evaluate the consultant or the training or the framework instead of asking the real question, were we really actually ready to do this type of work? Leadership development isn't information, it's behavior change. And behavior change requires humility. Most leaders I work with generally care about their organizations. The issue is rarely lack of effort. It is lack of visibility. Leadership becomes isolating, and without intentional reflection, even strong leaders can lose sight of how their behavior is shaping the organization. Before assuming your organization has a people problem, ask a different question. What leadership environments are we creating? Because when leadership grows, organizations grow with it. If this episode made you feel a little uncomfortable as a leader, that actually is a good sign. Discomfort is often where leadership growth begins. If you're a senior leader or executive team wanting to better understand how leadership behavior is shaping culture, communication, and accountability inside your organization, that's the work we do at Authentic Encounters, because leadership development isn't about motivation, it's about transformation. You can learn more about our leadership programs and executive coaching at AuthenticEncounters.com. Thank you for joining me for this conversation. Until next time, keep leading with courage, clarity, and authenticity.